He was not a hitman. He did not pull triggers. He did not plan murders. He did not choose victims. What he did was clean up. And for 10 years, no one knew his name. The cartel sent him bodies, already dead. He put them in a drum. He added caustic soda. He stirred. He waited. And then, where a human being had been, there was almost nothing left. He says he dissolved at least 300 people, 300 families who never got a body to bury, 300 cases that simply ceased to exist, 300 murders that, in the eyes of the Mexican justice system, never technically happened because there was no evidence, no remains, no proof. His name was Santiago Meza López. The cartel called him El Pozolero. And when Mexican federal agents finally arrested him in January 2009, he sat in front of cameras and explained calmly in full sentences exactly what he had done. This is that story, fully, no filter. This is Uncut Cases, real crimes, no filter. Let's get into it. Santiago Meza López was born in 1963 in Sinaloa, Mexico. He was not born into a cartel. He was not groomed from childhood for organized crime. By most accounts, he was an ordinary man, a laborer, a mason, someone who worked with his hands. He laid bricks. He built things. There was nothing in his background that made him stand out. He moved to Tijuana at some point in the 1990s, as hundreds of thousands of Mexicans did, drawn by the border economy, the maquiladoras, the proximity to the United States. Tijuana in the 1990s was a city of extremes. Enormous economic opportunity on one side, violent cartel warfare on the other. The Arellano Félix brothers, known internationally as the Tijuana Cartel, controlled the city with an iron grip. Their organization moved cocaine, heroin, marijuana, and methamphetamine across the border into the United States at a scale that generated billions of dollars. They were among the most powerful drug traffickers in the world at that time. Now here is the detail that Santiago Meza López himself gave to investigators when he was arrested. The detail that, depending on how you read it, explains everything. Or explains nothing at all. He said that he joined the cartel because of his sister. According to his statement, his sister had been raped by members of a local criminal organization. He wanted revenge. He wanted to find the men who had done it and make them pay. And the path that presented itself, the only path in his telling, was through Teodoro García Simental, known as El Teo, a rising operator in the Tijuana Cartel connected to the Arellano Félix brothers, a man with resources, reach, and violence at his disposal. Meza López says he approached El Teo to find the men who raped his sister. He ended up working for the cartel instead. Whether you believe that account is a matter of judgment. What is not in dispute is what happened next. By the year 2000, Santiago Meza López had become the cartel's specialist in a task no one else wanted: disposing of bodies, not killing people. That is an important distinction, one that Meza López himself made repeatedly after his arrest. He insisted that he never personally killed anyone, that the bodies arrived already dead, that his job was not to end lives but to erase them. A federal prosecutor asked about this claim said the following, and I want to be precise here. Under Mexican law, destroying evidence of a homicide is itself a serious crime. The distinction between killer and body disposer was legally meaningful. It would later determine how Meza López was charged and sentenced. His direct boss was Teodoro García Simental, El Teo. García Simental was initially a lieutenant within the Arellano Félix organization, one of many middle-tier operators running a piece of the Tijuana corridor. But around 2008, El Teo made a move that triggered a catastrophic internal war. He broke from the Arellano Félix brothers and aligned with the Sinaloa cartel. the organization led by Joaquin El Chapo Guzman. This split turned Tijuana into one of the most dangerous cities on the continent almost overnight. Daytime shootouts, bodies on bridges, beheadings in public spaces. It was in this context a cartel war generating an unusual volume of corpses that needed to disappear. That El Pozolero's work became, in the cartel's internal economy, extraordinarily valuable. The method was taught to Meza López by another cartel operative named Efrain Perez, a senior member of the Arellano Félix organization who later received a 26-year sentence in the United States. Perez showed Meza López the process. Meza López refined it over years of practice. He was paid approximately 7,000 Mexican pesos per week, the equivalent at the time of around $600 for 10 years of work, for at least 300 human beings. That works out to roughly $2 per body if you want to do the math. Some estimates based on investigative reporting suggest the real number was closer to 650 victims over his decade of work. Not 300. The 300 figure was what he admitted to. There may have been far more. I want to be direct with you about this section. The method Santiago Meza López used is deeply disturbing. I'm going to describe it factually without dramatization because the facts themselves are the story. I won't add anything to make it worse than it already is. The process, as described in Meza López's own confession and confirmed in Mexican federal investigation records, worked as follows. He used 200-liter industrial drums, the kind used for chemicals or oil. He would fill the drum approximately halfway with water. Then he would add 2 sacks of caustic soda, sodium hydroxide, a highly corrosive industrial chemical used in manufacturing. The caustic soda combined with water generates an intense exothermic reaction. The temperature rises dramatically. The body was placed into the drum hole. He stated he did not dismember the victims. The mixture was heated further and stirred over the course of approximately 8 hours. In that time, the caustic soda would break down organic tissue, skin, muscle, organs, fat, leaving behind only the most resistant materials. Teeth, nails, small fragments of bone. Those remaining fragments were then removed, taken to open land outside the city, burned with gasoline and buried. The locations where Meza López worked included multiple ranches and properties on the outskirts of Tijuana. The sites are known in the case record by their names: La Gallera, Maclovio Rojas, Ojo de Agua, and Loma Bonita, among others. Investigators searched these properties after his arrest and found remnants that confirmed his account: fragments of bone and teeth, chemical residue consistent with the process he described, areas of disturbed earth. Here is the scale of what this means in practical terms. If the 300 figure is accurate, the conservative estimate, that is 300 families in Tijuana and across Mexico who reported a loved one missing and received no answer. 300 murder investigations that stalled because there was no body. 300 homicides that technically could not be prosecuted as homicides in the absence of remains. The Mexican legal system requires proof. El Pozolero's job was to eliminate the proof. The cartel understood exactly what they were paying for. By 2008, the final year before his arrest, the violence in Tijuana had become so extreme, the death toll so high, that Meza López's operation struggled to keep pace. Investigators found evidence suggesting that disposal sites were being used beyond their capacity. The cartel's internal war was generating more bodies than one man could process. It was, in the most disturbing sense, an industrial problem of scale. On January 22, 2009, the Mexican army moved on a residential property in the Baja Seasons neighborhood of Tijuana. Intelligence had tracked a gathering there. a party by most accounts that had been going on for several days. The target was El Teo, García Simental himself. The army moved fast. García Simental escaped along with approximately 30 other individuals, but one man did not make it out in time. Santiago Meza López was arrested without resistance. 3 days later, on January 25, 2009, the administration of President Felipe Calderón presented Meza López at a press conference in Mexico City. This was a standard practice of the Calderón government's drug war strategy. High-profile arrests were put in front of cameras to demonstrate results. Meza López stood before journalists, flanked by masked federal police officers, and answered questions. What happened next was unusual. Meza López did not lawyer up and stay silent. He talked. He answered every question put to him. A reporter asked how many people he had dissolved. He said 300. The reporter asked if he had killed them. He said no, they were already dead when they came to him. He was asked how long the process took. He said 24 hours. He was asked if he felt remorse. He said, and this is documented in multiple sources, that he asked for forgiveness from the families of the dead. That press conference, broadcast on national television across Mexico, produced one of the most extraordinary and disturbing pieces of television in the history of the country's drug war. A man calmly explaining in clear and specific language how he had erased 300 human beings from existence. Not shouting, not crying, not breaking down, simply answering questions. The families of the missing watched. The country watched. It was impossible to look away. Here is where the case becomes something else entirely. In 2012, 3 years after his arrest, 3 years after confessing on national television, Santiago Meza López received his first sentence, 10 years, for organized crime, clandestine burial, and criminal association. Not for murder, because he was never charged with murder. His legal position, that he disposed of bodies but did not kill anyone, was accepted by prosecutors as the basis for charges. He was the cleaner, not the killer. And Mexican law at the time did not have a mechanism to charge him for the deaths of people whose murders could not be proven, because their bodies had ceased to exist. He served his 10-year sentence. He was due for release in 2022. He had been incarcerated for 13 years at that point for dissolving 300 human beings. Then in March 2024, a federal court issued a second sentence, 30 years and 8 months, for organized crime and kidnapping. This additional sentence had nothing to do with the dissolving of bodies. It was connected to his broader role in the cartel's operations. Kidnapping and organized crime charges that prosecutors had built separately over the years since his arrest. He is currently 71 years old. He is serving his sentence at the Centro Penitenciario Número 18 in Ramos Arizpe, Coahuila. No one has ever been charged with the murders of the 300 people whose bodies he dissolved. Because there are no bodies. Because the murders, legally speaking, cannot be proven. Because El Pozolero's work was so thorough that the justice system has no way to close 300 homicide cases. That is the verdict, not just for Santiago Meza López, for every victim who was put in that drum. I want to be clear about what this case actually is. It is not a story about one man's depravity. It is a story about a system. A cartel that needed a body disposer the same way a legitimate business needs a logistics manager. A man who filled that role for a weekly salary. A government that, when it finally caught him, didn't know what to charge him with because the law had not anticipated someone whose entire crime was making crimes disappear. The families of the missing in Tijuana, hundreds of them, will never have a body to bury. Will never have a grave to visit, will never have a legal verdict that names what happened to their loved one as murder, because without remains, the murder cannot be proven. That is not a legal technicality. That is the reality that El Pozolero's existence created for 300 families. And the man who ordered those murders, Teodoro García Simental, El Teo, was arrested in January 2010. He is also in prison, but the men he had killed are still dissolved, still gone. Santiago Meza López said he asked for forgiveness from the families of the dead, on national television, in front of cameras, with masked soldiers standing next to him. I'll let you decide what that's worth. What do you think justice looks like in this case for El Pozolero, for El Teo, and for the 300 families who never got an answer? Drop your take in the comments. I read everyone.